Hi, my name is Dane Niederman. I'm a freshman at CU Boulder, and today I'm going to be talking about the chemistry behind the rotary engine. Let's begin. So a little bit of history behind this. The rotary engine was invented in the 1800s, but these were piston-driven engines used in aircrafts up until World War II. But in the 1940s, a man named Felix Wankel wanted to make an engine that was more powerful, lighter, more reliable, and smoother. So he created a combustion engine that used a triangle-shaped rotor and an oval-shaped housing. So the Wankel rotary engine, these are majority of the parts used for the Wankel rotary engine. We are only going to be talking about 5 of the key components for this. They are the centric shaft, the housing, the rotor, the side plate, and the apex seals. And for these components, the materials used are either aluminum, cast iron, silicon nitride, or chromium oxide. So to start, let's talk about the housing. So the housing has to endure the rotor spinning constantly inside, so it has to endure a lot of friction, a lot of heat and pressure. So, and because Felix wanted the engine to be extremely light, he uses aluminum, as this is the biggest component of this engine. But one where aluminum is very easy to work with, very affordable, and very light, the one downside is it is very rough, especially on the inside. So to counteract this, he uses chromium oxide. He put a thin layer of chromium oxide on the inside to make it less rough, which limits the friction. And the chromium oxide also adds an extra shield of protection and helps dissipate the heat faster, as it has a very high thermal conductivity level, and keeping the engine from reaching aluminum's melting point. And because of this, it helps parts within the engine bay, not inside the engine, from melting, like wires. Now let's talk about the side plate, eccentric shaft, and the rotor. A little background behind this. The rotor is what constantly spins inside the casing, and it has to endure friction and a lot of pressure. The side plate is what encloses everything, and it also has to endure a lot of friction and pressure as the rotor constantly spins at high RPMs on the plate. And then the eccentric shaft is what takes the motion from the rotor, transfers it to the transmission, and then the transmission puts it to the wheels. For this, iron is used over aluminum. This is because of how strong iron is. Even though it is heavier, it is very smooth, very dense, and it has a very high thermal conductivity level and melting point. This is because of how strong the molecular structure is. If we look at the molecular structure of aluminum versus iron, we can see that aluminum has an FCC structure and iron has a BCC structure. The BCC structure has a more densely packed valence electron field compared to the FCC, making iron extremely durable and all the factors I just talked about, making it the perfect choice for this. Now let's talk about the apex seal. This, out of any part, is probably the most vulnerable part of the engine, as commonly is made out of iron, but because of how heavy iron is, it wears down the springs that connect it to the rotor and keep it in contact with the block. It wears that down extremely fast, as it is constantly pushed in and out, in and out. But because of this, it fails really quick, meaning the whole engine has to be taken apart and those need to be replaced. With the iron, that happens commonly. But an alternative the aftermarket and some factory manufacturers are making, they're making it out of silicon nitride. Silicon nitride is used as they're extremely light and extremely durable, meaning it will never lose contact with the housing and will always separate the combustion process. And it is so strong because of how it has such a short bond, requiring so much energy to separate that bond. But with that, it has an extremely high melting point, and the one downside to this product is that it is extremely hard to make, but a great alternative. Now let's talk about the timing combustion. There are 4 main parts of the combustion process. We have intake, compression, spark, and then exhaust. And then the main combustion equation for this and many other internal combustion engines, it can be described by this. And this also describes this full cycle of the rotary engine. And the materials chosen that I just talked about were chosen as this process spins at an extremely high RPM rate. And this engine can reach extremely high RPMs compared to a lot of other internal combustion engines. In conclusion, this engine did achieve a majority of its goals, but it never really caught on. It did, the only problems it had were it had no low-end power, very bad fuel economy, burned a lot of oil, and like I talked about earlier, when those apex seals would fail, it would be really expensive to repair. And because of these issues, people saw this and didn't really buy it. The last we saw from a production car of the Rotary Engine was in 2003 with the Mazda RX-7 and the RX-8. But as of recently, we did see a concept car from Mazda using the Wankel Rotary Engine, but we haven't seen anything publicly to buy. Other than that, thank you so much for listening.